Joe Teirab is with us. Joe, you're running in the 3rd district.
The 2nd district.
Second district against Angie Craig. And you have written, I'm a Marine, I'm a former federal prosecutor, and I'm running for Congress to fight for safer communities, to put an end to Bidenomics that has made life unaffordable for too many families, to get our debt and deficit under control, and to ensure safety and prosperity for all Minnesotans. How can you possibly fail?
Well, look, I don't think I can fail if we're sticking to the number one thing that's gotten me, which is just common sense. I mean, why can't we have a little common sense?
It isn't there, is it?
It's not there. And hey, look, if I'm a guy that can just put a little bit of common sense back into Washington and our politics, then I've done my job.
Harvard grad, Marine veteran, prosecutor, lifelong Minnesotan, pretty much.
Lifelong Minnesotan.
Your mom and dad came from Sudan.
So my dad came from Sudan. My mom grew up in Bryn Mawr in Minneapolis.
Oh.
So she went to West High School, and I grew up down in Windham, but was born in the Twin Cities in St. Louis Park.
What made you decide to make this your first foray into politics?
Yeah, I mean, at some point you just got to say to myself, hey, I'm on the sidelines here, and I want to get involved. I can't sit idly by while I feel like the American dream is being taken away by these politicians who are there. They talk a big talk, but they can't walk the walk, don't get stuff done. And Angie Craig hasn't gotten anything done on the economy, on an open border. And so I'm in a position to do something about it. So that's what I wanted to do.
What do you think the American dream is? Let me rephrase that. What do you think the American dream was, and what do you think it's become?
I think it was, and it should be, is, hey, getting to live the life you want to live. Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. And I think, generally speaking, the best way to do that is to have the government off our backs. The government should do some things well, right? Keep our streets safe, keep our country safe for the border, roads, bridges. But other than that, let small businesses thrive, let families thrive. And right now, it's not happening.
One of the ways small businesses and families can thrive is, I think this country has, well, I can't even count them. I don't know the number. It could be looked up. But we're overregulated. Government has got their hands in everything. We're just overregulated. And it's costing businesses too much money.
Way too much money. And honestly, we just don't even know the bottom of it. I mean, I was talking to a voter last year. Him and his wife bought some property in southern Dakota County, and he told me that just to improve the land, to build a bridge over maybe a 3-foot stream, he had to go through no less than 11 different approvals through committees at the county level, the city level, federal, state. That's just totally
on
stifling.
Private property?
On private property, yeah. So it's just like, those kind of stories are everywhere, not only for people who are just trying to build a better life for themselves and their families, but of course for small businesses who are just trying to thrive, create opportunities for others, and help our economy thrive.
Can you do anything as one sane human being in Congress?
Well, you can. I mean, you have to hopefully have the, pursuing humility to say, hey, look, I can't do everything by myself, but I'm just going to be one of, many people in Congress who are going to say, hey, look, we need to call out things that have to be called out. The fact that we're $35 trillion in debt, the fact that we have money being spent on things that should not be spent on. So we just need to put our priorities back in order. The first thing for me is going to be, hey, we need to make sure we have a secure border. That's the number one thing.
But we're $35 trillion in debt, and nobody talks about it.
And we need to talk more about it.
Does Angie talk about it?
She doesn't talk about it because she likes to pass things like the American Rescue Plan, $1.9 trillion, things that, Larry Summers, Bill Clinton's Treasury Secretary, said was the least responsible macroeconomic policy of the last 40 years. That's what Angie Craig voted for. We can't have it anymore. Well,
she's pretty much voted her party line, hasn't she?
Yeah, and now she likes to talk a big game about different stats here and there, about supposed bipartisanship, but where it ends up mattering in terms of the economy, prices, inflation, she's just been with Biden and Harris the whole step of the way on that. And on the border as well. I mean, she puts up a bunch of ads and she's got the money to do it, but when brass tacks, she voted against the border security bill in 2023. That would have just given us more border wall, more border patrol agents, and reformed our asylum process, which needs to be done. So at that point, if she failed, then I think she has to be held accountable for it.
How did you go to Harvard and come out as a sane human being?
No offense taken. No, just kidding. Look, I like to say that I've done 3 deployments to hostile territory. 2 were to Ivy League schools and 1 was to Iraq. But No, I love my time at Harvard. There's a certain sense for folks who are coming from my side of the aisle kind of can better handle thinking about how leftists and those on the left think, because we have to grow up in it. We go to schools with this stuff, but I think folks on the left don't really know how to handle talking from the conservative perspective. And so I think it was helpful to help me handle, talking to friends and family of the other side, and I get running for bipartisan solutions, common sense solutions.
How did you end up at Harvard? How did that happen?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I went to Cornell for undergrad, and at some point I realized, what I'm going to do with my life. That classic question. My dad wanted to be a doctor, so kind of failed him on that front, but just became a lawyer. And
that's a real failure.
That's a huge
underachiever.
It's rough. It's rough. But yeah, I kind of applied to schools and didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, and quickly on at Harvard, I realized, hey, I think I want to pursue public service, and I had a lot of friends who were going to be joining the military. I had one buddy who was in all of my first-year law school classes, who was a Marine officer. He had been in Iraq for 2 weeks, and he had stepped on an IED in Iraq, and so he was a double-leg amputee. Really just inspired me to join the Marine Corps, so that's what I did. I was on active duty for 5 years.
Well, thank you for that, and that's amazing. When you pit yourself against Angie, I see two completely different views of the world.
Yeah, I mean, it's one that says, where should the power be? Should it be with bureaucrats in Washington or the government, or should it be with people? Should the money be with bureaucrats in Washington, or should it be more money in your pocket? I think it's just two fundamentally different views of the world, and I think people thrive when they have more individual liberty.
Well, the way we've said that on this show is we think the political class, the political world, has drifted off from the rest of us. They live on a third rail. They don't really have anything in common with us anymore. Angie strikes me. It might be a nice gal. I don't know if have we ever even had her on?
I don't think we have.
But it strikes me that she has fully joined that third rail, that there's a comfort level there once you get there. And they tend to become completely separate from the daily lives of ordinary Americans. And I would imagine, I wonder, in the event you win, and you should win, is that a temptation you'll have to ignore or face or realize, or what?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a middle-class guy myself, and so
is Kamala Harris.
That's how she starts every answer, right? They could ask her, what should the tax rate be, the corporate tax rate be?
I'm a middle-class kid. Yeah.
Well, I grew up in a middle-class family, and word salad.
Right.
But I'm a middle-class guy. I'll always be middle-class. I mean, I filled up my gas tank, I think, this morning. I go to Cub Foods. I spend $200 when maybe a couple of years ago it should have been a $100 grocery bill. Folks with families, a bunch of kids, are spending way more than that. So,
do you have kids?
No kids.
Yep.
No wife. But I'm spending 100% of my time on this race for Congress, and it's been a blast so far.
Well, I'm glad you enjoy it. I can't. How old are you?
37.
Well, you're still young enough to maybe find it enjoyable, but I have to believe that it will be crucial to remain in touch, and you seem so grounded that won't be a problem.
Well, one thing in the Marine Corps, you end up doing everything, right? I think maybe there's one weekend in training in Quantico, Virginia, I found myself at 11 p.m. in a laundry room sweeping the floor, and this is after graduating Harvard Law School. So I think everyone, you have to pay, you pay your dues, you learn a bunch of humility and just putting hard work in, and that'll always pay off.
How is your polling suggest you're doing?
Hey, the polling is looking close. It's going to be a close race. It's always close. It was close in 2016. Well, in fact, Jason Lewis won that year, and in 2020, the last presidential year, the Republican nominee, Tyler Kishner, got very close as well. So it's going to be close. I know the minority leader on the Democrat side, Hakeem Jeffries, was in town campaigning for Angie Craig, and so they don't send folks like that just willy-nilly. They know it's a close race, and that's how we're treating it.
Is she outspending you?
Oh, I mean,
can you even add it up?
She's got an open checkbook, doesn't she?
It's not even close. It's kind of funny. Someone forwarded me an Angie Craig fundraiser email, making it sound like Joe Teirab raised all this money compared to her. It's like, fact check, she's got like 4 times the amount of money we have. That's why everyone has seen all of her ads that started with the 4-wheeler. And
Do you own a 4-wheeler? Do you have one?
I don't own a 4-wheeler, no.
Okay.
Maybe I should, though. Maybe I should buy one.
You know, you're in the Marines and you're having a hell of a time just taking the cap off a water bottle. All right, now you got it. Okay.
I got it open.
I thought
already,
you were
Joe.
struggling
No,
with
he
it.
was
I was
trying
going
to
to
be
help you.
No, I'm fiddling around. Thank you so much, Joe. I thought this was going to be helpful.
Well, the guy was doing this, and I thought I better help him. I don't know.
He puts a seal on it.
I want to ask you something because I was talking to Joe about this earlier. Joe, why don't more people like you run for office? I mean, you're the American dream story. Seriously.
Great question. I think it's because, there we go, Chris. I think it's partly because, what folks are living through right now in the Twin Cities in terms of if you're watching a football game or whatever, you're seeing all these ads, right? And it's kind of frustrating for me as a guy. I go to my local Lifetime Fitness and, LA Fitness in Burnsville, and I'm on the treadmill watching a TV ad of myself, and it's this dark figure, dark, shadowy figure, Joe Teirab. Do people want to deal with that? The lies that are spun about you? I mean, it's just, but, I think that's probably why more people don't want to jump into the fire, but I've had a good time doing it because I get to meet awesome people like you on the campaign trail.
Would you suggest that if you win, your time would be limited? Or do you want to make a career of this?
No, I mean, I've always been a guy. I think I was early on in the race. I said we got to pass term limits. I don't think people should be in Congress forever. I think it should be some kind of set short amount of time, and then you leave because people get out of touch, just like you talked about earlier.
Are you endorsed by law enforcement?
Yeah, we did. Was really proud to receive the endorsement from the Minnesota Fraternal Order of Police. So those are a good group of guys and men and women who just bravely serve our communities, and that's a big part of my job as a criminal prosecutor at the state level, at the federal level. Was working really closely day in and day out. Worked in a war room, not too much bigger than the room we're in right now, of a bunch of people, cops, state, local, federal, trying to go at the Bloods Criminal Street Gang was one example that I co-led an investigation on. So they know I'll always have their back, and that's the kind of attitude I'll take to Congress.
What was your role in the food fraud investigation? Yeah,
I was one of the few, the many prosecutors on the case because it was just a big case. At the time I was on it, there were 5 prosecutors, and there's a bunch of federal agents working on the case as well, and we basically charged the case, looking at the $250 million of this money that should not have gone out as easily as it did, to say the least. It was just way too easy for these guys to steal money.
You get the feeling that kind of malfeasance is rampant in government?
No doubt. No doubt. I mean, it's, when you don't have the incentive in government to, have the budget and keeping the books straight, as you do it in the private sector, that stuff happens all the time. We saw a bunch of it in Minnesota, right, with the frontline worker fraud.
It's happening all the time.
The unemployment insurance fraud, all the stuff. I mean, it's
child care fraud years ago, where they were doing daycares. There weren't that many. There's nobody there, and it was just it was overlooked. Nobody's there to check.
The next will be autism centers. There's a big push on for more and more autism care, which is understandable, but it's autism care that's outnumbering the number of people who have autism. So that's something to watch. The larger question would be, you touched on it. The buck doesn't stop anywhere. No one in this state has suffered any consequences for the food fraud, including the governor, who's never said a damn thing about it.
Well, that's one thing that, sadly, it took the federal government, the U.S. Attorney's Office that I worked in, to step in. But it shouldn't have had to take that. It should have been the state that was doing something about it. I think it's the same thing on other kinds of violent crime, where us as federal prosecutors had to go in on these felons who are possessing guns over and over and over again, causing crime and killing people, dealing drugs. It shouldn't have taken us and the federal government to go at those people, because we had a failure at the state level with Mary Moriarty, who hasn't seen a cop that she doesn't want to charge for just doing the right thing, with Trooper Londegren, and the list can go on about her malfeasance.
Right. What's next on your campaign trail? We're running out of time for the election. It's under 2 weeks now. What does your schedule look like?
Hey, look, we're door knocking basically every day. We're going to events, meet with voters, and we're just getting the message out that this is a close race, and we don't have to go with the status quo with Angie Craig. We can go a different direction. People are fed up on the economy. They're fed up with just an open border, and we can go a different direction. And I think on that option.
it's a great option, and I want to repeat it. She quickly seems to have absorbed the life of the status quo. There's nothing that distinguishes her. There's nothing that suggests she has her eye out for her neighbors back home. Now, she might. I don't mean that in an unkind way, but I don't. I just think that the third rail sucks people in, and they tend to live a life that's completely separate from us. And you would have to figure out a way to not have that happen to you.
Exactly. And the thing I've been saying is, because I've shared a debate stage with Angie Craig now, well, I guess 3 times, including Farm Fest. And, she's nice. She's a hard worker. But just at the end of the day, we need results. Mm-hmm. And right now, Minnesotans, Americans, but people of the 2nd Congressional District aren't getting the results. Mm-hmm. And so I've said before, hey, you have a contractor, you hire him to do some work on your house. They might be a nice guy. They might, worked hard. But at the end of the day, if they mess up the job, you're not going to hire them again. So why are we sending Angie Craig back to Congress for not getting the job done? We can't do it.
Yeah, I don't understand it either.
So, Joe, you mentioned prosecution at the federal level as opposed to the state level. And it seems to me Joe always has this phrase, the closer you get to the country's tallest buildings, these things tend to happen. It seems to me that this is being done deliberately. Am I wrong in thinking that way?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Why?
Why? Well, I think people like Mary Moriarty, kind of going back to her position. I mean, she is so blinded by her ideology, and it's an ideology that finds suspicious people who are just trying to keep our community safe. And a lot of this, sadly, is from this critical theory, right? And she doesn't view people as individuals. She puts people in groups. She doesn't view people as individuals, and I think that's a huge problem. And people in law enforcement are feeling that. That's why it's really, really hard for law enforcement, as I talk to them across the state, but of course in the 2nd District, it's really hard to retain and recruit talent. And that has a big impact everywhere. And more drugs are coming into our communities, and people are dying more often from fentanyl. There's more crime happening, more burglary happening, what have you, because of that failure.
She makes Mike Freeman look like a conservative. Bring back Mike Freeman.
Are you going to start that campaign, Rookie? Is that what we're doing?
He told me absolutely not.
Have you worked with her?
I have not personally worked with her. I think we definitely have in the office as federal prosecutors filled the gaps where they failed, just charging people that should have already been held in custody, and lo and behold, they get released, and we have to charge them for their continuing crimes.
Right. Are you still in the federal prosecutor's office?
No, I'm not. I had to leave that job last year to run for Congress, and it was a tough decision. I loved what I did. I mean, I got to work with cops. It felt like I was in a movie sometimes, sitting as far as you are from me against hardened criminals who, at some point want to meet with the government and say, hey, what truth can you tell me? What drugs are being dealt on this corner? And we're going to.
Can you get back to that if you need to?
My goal is to win this race, and so I'm not even thought about that. But I love that my job as a federal prosecutor. I'd always be honored to do stuff like that again someday.
Where can 2nd District residents see you next? What's coming up?
Well, probably the best way, I don't have a specific event. It's just going to be me randomly showing up at their door like I've been doing a bunch. So, so I encourage people to check out, my website, joeformn2.com, joeformn2.com, or, just search the debates. Because what I've been trying to tell people, these debates weren't really widely put out. We did one on NPR. We did one with the Dakota County Chamber. I just think if people watch these debates, they're going to get a sense that, okay, one person here is out of touch, and they've been in Washington, and they haven't gotten stuff done. And I just got the sense that she really didn't want to be there because she's got a tough job to defend the record. It's kind of an indefensible record, and so that's why I would encourage people to check those debates out.
Where can we find those?
I guess you just can. They're on YouTube.
Google. We got a thing called Google.
Just call it Google machine.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, Joe, best of luck.
Well,
it's wonderful to have you, and if I lived in your district, I'd vote for you.
I appreciate that.
One of us does.
Yeah. Well, you do, don't you? Are you 2nd District? You don't know, do you? That's
he'll find out on November 5th.
He's in South St. Paul, Joe. He's in South St. Paul.
I just get the ballot and just run right down the line.
Yeah. Oh, God.
Attaboy, Rick.
I'm really sorry I asked that. Joe Teirab running for Congress seat in the 2nd District. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
We'll be
Appreciate
back.
it.